Hello all the crazy people out there, my name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games, and the August of 2023 GameMaker update is now upon us. Yes, I realize that it hasn't been August in about a week. Just roll with it. Yo-Yo Games sometimes plays a little bit fast and loose with the release dates. Anyway, there have been a lot of new additions to GameMaker this time around that people have gotten excited about. TileNet collisions is probably the biggest one. We've also got a few new debug UI features and some other things, but change that seems to have gone mostly unnoticed by people so far, except for maybe people who were using the beta, is that GameMaker Sprite Editor has long been a point of contention for people who use this engine, going back to pretty much the beginning of when GMS2 came out a number of years ago. Some people certainly had opinions on that. I tolerate it. It's not part of the engine that I lose a lot of sleep over, but that's neither here nor there. Well, starting in the August of 2023 GameMaker update, you have the option to define a few external editors for different asset types. So if you go to Preferences, General Settings, and come down here to Paths, you can scroll down here and you can find a few settings regarding external editors. So you can define an external editor for sound files, SWF, which is Shockwave Flash, which I didn't even realize the GameMaker still supported, but if you happen to be using those, you can define an editor for it. You have spine files, skeletal animation sprites, and you have bitmap files, and I suspect that this is the one that people are going to be most interested in. If you click on the file selector, you can open up, or you can rather select, for example, the executable for Aseprite, or for, I don't know, what are people using these days? GIMP, Krita, Paint.net, whatever external image editing tool you happen to like, and you can apply those changes, and now when you go to the sprite properties, if you click Edit Image, GameMaker will open up your sprite in the external editor. So that's pretty neat. If you were to, let me make a really obvious change, like scribbling all over this guy. If you were to go and draw some graffiti on your sprite, when you come back to GameMaker, you're going to see two warnings. One is that all changes from the sprite all changes to a sprite from an external editor will be lost if the sprite is later on edited in the internal image editor, which is if you get rid of your external editor for sprites and if you go back to using GameMaker's internal image editor, then whatever changes you made will be lost. That's kind of an artifact of the way that the sprite frames are stored in the GameMaker project hierarchy. That's kind of a problem of its own. The way that GameMaker stores sprites is a little bit messy, but that might be a debate for a different video. That is certainly something that some people have opinions on. And more importantly, we're going to have a message that says project directory modified. So you have the option to either basically save or discard the changes that you made to the sprite. This happens whenever you edit a file that is part of a GameMaker project outside of GameMaker. If you use, for example, Yellow Afterlife's GMEdit, you'll be all too familiar with this. I'm going to hit reload, and we're going to have our graffiti duck appearing in the sprite editor. If I were to run the game with that and everything, it would appear like that. If you don't want to see that message every time you make an edit to a sprite in an external editor, you can go to, I believe it's just General Settings, and scroll down a little bit and check the Automatically Reload Changed Files box. That is a box that you might want to check anyway if you happen to edit files that are part of your GameMaker project outside of GameMaker, often like if you're using source control. As for the second warning, so this is where I'm going to say that I kind of feel like Yo-Yo Games released this feature a little bit maybe early, and maybe without thinking a few things through. So if you were to double click on a sprite frame, you would open it up and it would still open up in GameMaker's internal sprite editor. I feel like that's not the intended behavior. Usually when someone, double clicks on a sprite, they intend to edit the sprite image, and usually if they would have an external editor set, if they try to open up a sprite image for editing, they would want to use that external editor. So the fact that this will still open it up in the GameMaker sprite editor feels like a little bit of an oversight. If you're watching this video sometime in the future, this may or may not be fixed by the present day. I hope it is. Feels a little bit awkward. What was it? If I make any changes, yeah, again, if you do edit your sprite in GameMaker's internal sprite editor, yeah, this is a little bit awkward. Anyway, that's what the second warning is all about. So what I'm getting at here is that there is currently no way to open up multiple frames of a sprite in an external editor. You can only edit the first one. That's, you know, a little bit disappointing, even if I select a sum image that's later on down there. We're still only going to open up the first frame. There's a couple different interpretations on what the best way to do this would be. I personally am a fan of, if you have like multiple sprites selected and you say edit image, then Aseprite or Krita or whatever would open up multiple tabs for editing, or at the very least multiple windows, and you'd be able to edit all those sprites at the same time. But at the moment, that's not something that we really can do. Again, feels a little bit awkward and maybe perhaps unfinished. And another limitation of this, and this actually makes a little more sense based on the way that these external editors work, is if you have, let's say in your sprite editor, if you're working with like multiple layers, and I'm gonna just draw something such that we'll be making use of these sprite layers, and let's say that if you edit sprite properties and maybe mess with a blend mode or layer transparency or something like that, none of this will be preserved when you open up your sprite in your external editors. So if I go to edit image now, Aseprite is not going to have multiple layers. It's not going to have different settings on the layer properties, even though it basically supports the same ones the GameMaker does. All the layers and transparency effects and everything have been just rendered down to a single image. And that might be a bit of a disappointment to some people, but that actually makes sense. GameMaker is not actually building like an Aseprite file which contains layers with different settings or anything. All it's doing is taking a single PNG and telling the external editor to open it. Anyway, that's about it. If you wanted to go and set an editor for, I don't know, for example, for sound files and select Audacity or something. If I select Audacity, okay, I can go and, as far as I know, there is no edit sound button in any of these, like in the sound properties, but you can go right-click and open an external editor, and that will open up the sound in Audacity, and you can go play around with it, do whatever. But the Sprite editor is the one that everyone always gets worked up about. It's probably going to be the one that most people really care about. I know there's a couple people who use Spine, and they'll probably appreciate the ability to just open a Spine file like that. So, if you have any opinions on how the external editor functionality can be improved, feel free to submit a feature request. I don't know if there's been a feature request submitted yet on the subject. Again, hopefully if you're watching this video deep in the future, the issues that I mentioned will have been dealt with by then. But until then, you can go and debate it amongst yourselves in the comments or wherever else. And be nice about it, because I know that some of you have some strong opinions on editing sprites in GameMaker. Keep it civil. Anyway, that's it for me for today, I think. I do want to make videos on a couple of the other changes that this GameMaker update has brought us eventually, but I'll get to that when we get to it. My name is Michael. I like Wizards and Dragons and making games. I try to post a couple of game dev videos a week, whether that's a tutorial or some news update like this, or some video of me actually making a game. So if any of this stuff appeals to you, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. Otherwise, I hope this is something that you make use of, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Army Armbuster, DJ Gibbles, Edward Holt, GameMaker, Gamer Player, John Luigi Celentano, Manta Ray, Syndra Larson, Squarecrow, Vitro V, and Zenjament for supporting these videos. If you want to contribute to the channel, head on over to the Patreon page down in the video description to join the fun.